Alright, Section 5, Fuel Oil System Description. Engine fuel supply contained with the fuel tank located below the locomotive platform. Fuel is drawn with a tank with electrical driven fuel booster pump and circulated through the system in Figure 5.9. Fuel system consists of the following components listed in accordance with the fuel flow from the fuel tank through the system: fuel tank, fuel heater, optional primer filter, fuel buster pump, relief valve, secondary filter, engine fuel headers, injection equipment, regulating valve, fuel drainer, headers, single element fuel strainer. Suction side of the system between the tank and the booster pump with the fuel is drawn with the fuel heater with the option through a single element with the fuel strainer before reaching the pump. Pressure side of the system is between the booster pump with the pressure regulating valve with the discharge excess fuel back through the tank with the discharge with the booster pump flows to a large single element primary fuel filter with the leaf valve with the connect with the pump discharge with the protect with the booster pump from overloads caused by flow of the restriction pressure side of the system. Three element secondary fuel filter serve as a more completely other foreign particle from the fuel. Fuel is conducted with the secondary filter through a pipe to the engine fuel header. An individual flexible hose connected between the injection pump with the inlet fittings with makeup of the engine fuel header with the fuel header with the system for supply with the fuel with the injection pump with the left bank with the crossover near the turbocharger with the supply with the injection pump with the right bank, except for the fuel return with the tank with the regulating with the regulating valve with the adjust to maintain the pressure for the engine fuel header. Two fuel drain headers one on each side of the engine to collect with the fuel leaking back from the injector to the high pressure pump with the directed back in the fuel tank. The fuel tank of the locomotive is equipped with a single fuel supply of the tank with essentially located between the platform and the tank is equipped with two fuel openings, one on each side of the tank with two fuel light level sight glasses, one near each of the fill opening with a standard equipment down in the tank with the fuel level to dial with the gauge of the must be applied with the fill tank optional equipment with the one some of the located lengthwise with the bottom of the tank equipped with both ends of the condensate with the drain valve with a large drain opening with a container with a plug with the two vent pipes with the tank of the atmosphere. Electrical emergency fuel cutoff. Electrical operated with emergency fuel cutoff system is ran with three emergency trip switches open near one located near each tank filling opening with the operator one in the operator's cab. Alright, so monetary depressing any one of these push buttons will stop at the fuel booster pump and then stop at the flow of the fuel to the engine. At the same time, the signal of the engine governor stop at the engine. This system is restored normal operation by depressing the reset button of the operator's cab at the opening and starting with the engine resetting. System will reset automatically. Fuel servicing. Fuel oil specification recommended for the engine must be with the distillated fuel which should conform with American Society testing materials D975 number 2D for extreme low temperatures over the engines with the high altitudes. Number 1D fuel will be the minimum setting value of 45 may be used. Filling. Fuel filling may be done on either side of the locomotive by applying fuel hose to the filling. Open the fill fittings must be deferred depending on the customer preferences. Observe the upper sight with a gauge periodically during the filling to determine the weather when the tank is full. Fuel supply with the determine the aim with the time observed the upper lower sight gauge of the fuel with a dial gauge diffused to indicate fuel level. Drain. The fuel tank should be periodically drained and accumulated water condensate that may be temporarily operating with the condensate with the drain valve at each end of the tank sum. These valves made up of the straight head screws contained with the drill passage for the internal stop with the limit of the number of turns that can be opened. Excessive amount of the water is found with the fuel tank. Check with the engine fuel filter system. Fuel system supply shall be made immediately if the water is permitted with the engine for the fuel system and cover the extensive damage of the system part. Large quantities of the fuel may be quickly drained with the tank of the remove of the drain plug for each end of the tank sum, but the sum of the covers by remove of the gain access of the tank and internal cleaning becomes necessary. Your fuel oil strainer filter description figure 5.1 fuel injection equipment protected with a foreign material with the fuel oil strainer primary and secondary. Show the fuel filters inside 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Air vent screw 1, 2 cover nut, 3 filter head, 4 shell assembly, 5 center bolt, 6 filter element. Alright, ordinary filter. The filter strainer with attached with the bracket with the mount with the right side of the engine near with the fuel booster pump with the primary and secondary filter attached with the bracket mount with the left side of the engine fuel strainer. The symbol consists of a fabricated steel can housing single defined mesh with a non wired screen. The element of the strainer is connected with the suction side of the booster pump with the remove of the relatively large particles of foreign metal with the fuel before the reach of the pump. With the primary fuel filter, the symbol consists of a large steel can which houses the single large filter element. See the section data section. The primary filter with the pipe connected with the booster pump with the fuel discharge opening. The secondary fuel filter assembly and consist of the cast of the manifold, the three filter shovel, the sheet shovel containing the filter element, shovel the range for the parallel flow. Assemble the pipe connected between the primary filter and the engine fuel header with the primary and secondary filters, complete with the fuel filtering process by removing the small foreign particle with the full protect with the engine fuel injection equipment. Element for cleaning and changing with the gradual drop of the fuel flow. Head pressure indication with the fuel strain of the fuel filters have become restricted and should be either cleaned or replaced. For fuel, to remove the fuel strain, remove the cleaning with the training element, remove the crane plug with the strain. Strainer housing with the drain, the housing, loosen the wire nut of the strainer cover, remove the strainer element. Remove the rubber grommet from the end of the strainer element, flush the element with clean solution with the blow drive with clean air, flush the oil strainer housing with clean fuel oil with the blow drive with clean air, inspect with the rubber grommet, the rubber O-ring with the housing under the strainer with strainer covered with the eve of the damage for the new one, install with the grommet strainer element with a replace with the cleaned element with a replace with the drain plug with the filter strainer shell, which clean and fuel oil, replace with the strainer covered with the tighten covered with the wing nuts and evenly carefully. Your primary fuel filter. With additions indicated with the primary fuel filter should be replaced with the drain with the filter, remove the drain plug located with the bottom and lower end of the filter housing, loosen the cover clamp bolt with the slowly remove the cover to prevent the filter element holding down the spring flying out. Remove the filter element thoroughly, flush the filter housing with a clean fuel oil, blow dry with a clean air, inspect the rubber O-rings of the housing should be under the cover the damage for the any of the way, the replaceable with the new O-ring, install the drain plug, insert with the new filter element. Replace hold down springs and cover and tighten the cover bolt. Secondary fuel filter, figure 5-1. When secondary fuel filter elements to be replaced, proceed as follows. Open the drain cock, drain with the filter shovel, loosen the cover nuts until free, lower with the shell assembly, remove the discard of the filter elements. Each of these cleaning fuel oil, blowout filter shells, close the drain cock, remove the protective wrapper with the filter element, install with the elements of filter shell, pressure the elements downly, firmly fill the shells with clean fuel oil, using new shell gaskets, plate with the shell again, the filter head, engine of the center bolts tighten with the nuts securely, start with the fuel booster pump, loose in the air vent with the screws, the fuel leakage of the free with the air bubble, the vent screw, check with the shell gasket vent, screw with the drain cock for the leakage over the short period of the fuel booster pump operation. Booster pump operation and motor. The description: fuel booster pump, the gear type of the gear type motor, driven directly in electrical motor with flexible coupling and maintained with a constant supply with the fuel in each of the cylinder injection pump. The pump housing constructed with the part of the motor with the engine which eliminates the shaft alignment problem with the motor base is fastened supporting bracket with the bolted side of the engine frame and the left side of the locomotive. Pump rotations indicate with the arrow over the pump of the housing with the direction rotation counterclockwise, which we're looking at the pump drive shaft and inspection maintenance. The pump fails to work properly with external leakage with the appear with the check with the coupling of the part pump housing rotors and idler gears for wear and chipped worn parts of the care must be taken when connecting pump piping. The pumping housing is to store with the misaligned pipes and also applying compound with the male fittings to prevent compound with the entering pump in the system. Pipe compounds contain abrasive material will damage pump parts and allow the entry of the system. Pump motor. The 75-volt DC motor compound one and totally enclosed. The armature of the shaft rotates on shell. Sealed ball bearings of the motor commutator brushes can be removed by moving the gasket covered over the brush openings. Fuel pump motor assists with the regulating fuel head over the pressure of the motor. Motor is constructed with a variable speed range of 1800 to 2200 RPMs while pumping against the 4 psi to 0 psi respectively. No, do not run the pump without fuel for longer than 2 minutes. Pump gear damage will result with a lack of fuel oil lubricates the pump parts. Engine drain system. Slight leakage of the fuel with the injection pump and the injection nozzle. Each of the power cylinder and normal. The leakage fuel is required to lubricate the pump, but the injection nozzles must be drained with the fuel tank system patched with each of the cylinder. Some of it conducts leakage through the upper portion of the cylinder from the base of the injection pump and down through the pump push rod activity. Fuel 2, figure 5, 2 show fuel pump, booster pump, discharge, fuel pump, inlet pipe, and then the motor and coupling. Passages for each cylinder base for this line with a drill passage for the engine mainframe with the fuel drain head that is attached to each side of the engine mainframe with a connector each side of the passage, each for the collect the drain fuel with the head of the pipe with the construction open end with the pipe at the end with the other end with the connection with the return drain fuel with a return tank Fuel drain system must remain free of obstruction. Permit gravity flow with the fuel of the tank system should be clogged. Fuel dilution with lubricating occurs. Self-priming normally is not necessary to prime the fuel system. The regulating valve will vent system when the booster pump is started. However, there's good practice to replace the primary filter element to filter the shell with the cleaning fuel before installing. This will ensure that against the pump damage due to insufficient lubricating during the initial starting line. Quicker primer to set priming of the system. Relief valve, description figure 5.8. The relief valve of the A is located in the fuel system between the booster pump discharge and secondary filter. The valve protects the booster pump against the electrical overloading, protect the system against the excessive pressure caused by clogged secondary filter fuel flow, stoppage of the pressure side of the system adjustment. Remove 1/2 inch pipe plug, install the calibrated 100 psi test gauge at the test point 1. Cap off the fuel head after it leaves the 8R pump. The 8R pump. Start with the booster pump with observe the test pressure for the data. Correct valve setting. Correct the valve setting with the remove the valve. Loosen the adjusting lock nut. Adjust the slide screw to set desired pressure. Turn the screw in to raise the pressure. Turn the screw out to lower the pressure. Tighten the lock nut. Replace the valve cap. Check for the gauge reading and stop the booster pump. Remove the test gauge and restore the piping as normal. Regulating valve, the description figure 5.9. Pressure regulating valve B is mounted near the secondary fuel filter located in the system between the fuel tank with the engine head. It is set with the maintain the fuel head pressure measured at test point 2. To see the data correction valve setting. When the setting with the fuel header pressure for the engine must be stopped. Primary and secondary filters must be clean within the fuel and the system must be free of the air bubbles. Fuel header and pressure drop slowly, often with a period of time, usually conditioned clogged fuel filters rather than incorrect setting of the pressure regulating valve. Filter element should be renewed first, then, if necessary, adjusting the pressure regulating valve as follows. Adjusting install 100 psi test gauge at test point 2. Note, be sure that the fuel strainer element that may be clean with the new elements have been installed with the primary and secondary filter. Start with the fuel booster pump engine with the engine operating idle speed with the read the pressure indicated in the test gauge. See data section. Remove the valve cap with the loosen of the adjusting line nut with adjust the slot screw with the desired pressure. See data valve setting. Turn the screw in for the rate of the pressure out. Lower the pressure. Turn the adjusting line nut in. Replace the valve cap with the cover. Check the gauge reading and stop the engine booster pump. Remove the test and gauge and replace pipe plug. Fuel injection equipment pump removal of the figure 5.3. The remove of the spring clip with adjusting link with the connect for the pump rack to the fuel control link with a high pressure line connection using a stiff brittle brush and fuel oil before disconnecting. Remove the high pressure fuel line between the pump and the injector. Correct. Cover the opening of the pump and fitting of the plastic cap. Remove the fuel branch line between the fuel header line with the cover, header pipe and connection, fuel drain with the header with the ply with the clean plug and the inlet connection with the pump. Remove the mounting bolts over the base of the pump and use special shaped wrenches lift over the pump. Over the engine, cover the area with the pump where remove the prevent foreign material for the engine unless the spare pump is installed. Immediately remove the fuel inlet T and apply a clean plug in the inlet connection. Alright, figure 5.3 shows the connection fuel injection pump. Installation. Caution. Before installing the pump of the engine, shorten and tap at the right with length with remove the cover at the bottom of the cylinder. See figure 5.4. Loosen the lock nut, tap the nut. Use 2 open-ended wrenches. Turn the tap of the adjusting nut lock and move the forward lock clockwise. Excessive tap at the rod. Travel the can, damage the pump it. And tap of the rod assembly. Push rod, tap adjustment, umbrella, locking nut, cover plate, overspeed line, oil line, fuel drainer, header. Alright, no, when installing the pump, be careful that no dirt and foreign material enter the fuel oil line, the connection with the engine, the plug with the seal of the plate, with all the unit until the connections will be made. Install the pump with the cylinder, secure with the mounting bolt, see data with the bolt, torque, connect with the fuel header with the high pressure fuel lines, install the adjustable link between the pump rack and the fuel control link, and secure the link with a spring clip. Pipe and timing adjustment. When the timing of the fuel tank of the pump is over the following, indicate the marks must refer with the scribe line with the pump timing window. See the marks on the time ring over the bearing overhook. The time window covered with the plug will locate with the lower side, outside of the pump housing. Each side of the window is scribed with the timing line with the plunge follower, and the pump appears behind the timing window with the upper edge for the setting of the pump timing. See figure 5.5. When the pump is extremely timed, the upper edge of the plunger flow with exactly the line up with the scribed timing marks at the edge of the pump window. Engine timing ring with the located with the outer face of the bearing overhook at the free end of the engine, but the ring contains 4 pump set marks. Each of the mark contains 2 numbers identified with the 8 of the parts opposite of the cylinder, for example, of 1 through 8. Examples 1 through 8 and 2 through 7. Alright, this shows your injection fuel timing window. 1 is your injection pump, 2 is the pump clamp bar, 3 is the timing window, 4 is the scribe lines, 5 is the plunger valve follower, and then timing window plug. There are 2 indicating points mounted above the timing ring. One indicates the right bank timing, the other indicates the left bank timing. When viewing the timing ring with the free end of the engine, figure 5-6, note the ring right bank indicating power appears on the left. Then this figure 5-6 shows fuel pump set marks timing rings, and this shows the point of the right cylinder bank timing ring, left bank cylinder. Alright, a hand left bank pointer appears on the right hand side. Use the care not to confuse the 1 through 8 top dead center mark with the 1 through 8 set mark. The incorrect injector pump timing can cause excessive pump plunger travel, which may result in damage to the pump. Tap the setting of the inlet exhaust valve. The cylinder may be checked with the if and the necessary for the adjust at the same time with the fuel pump. The cylinder is being timed. Number 1 right cylinder pump is used the example. The good starting point will use the all engine pumps there to be timed. Back off with the compression release plugs. 1 full turn on all cylinders. Move the cylinder head. Cover the plugs of the fuel pump with use timing windows. Move the cover over. Tap the valve with adjusting nut. Figure 5-4. Using the bare over tool. Slow the bar over the crankshaft over the direction of rotation until the timing the mark 180 set is exactly aligned with the right bank pointer. See figure 5-6. Check all the valves closed in one right, so the right bank cylinder fires and show the valves are closed in small amount with the free movement that will be noted by manual moving of the rocker arms. 6. If the valves are not closed, rotate with the crankshaft 1 more revolution direction of the rotation from stop the 1 through 8 set with the mark. Recheck with the valve, adjust the fuel pump, tap the numb for the 1 right hand cylinder bank on the top of the edge of the plunger valve with exactly aligned with the prescribed marks on the side with the fuel pump with the timing window. See figure 5-5. Lock the tab of the nut securely. Recheck the lining of the pumping timing marks if the correct with the process. See with the pump with the 1 left the end cylinder using the left bank pointer, arranging the 1 through 8 setting markings. Turn of the crankshaft until the markings are exactly aligned. Left bank pointer. Proceed to the next step of the next cylinder with the firing order. Repeat with the 16th cylinder with the time made with the make sure that the tab of the nut is locked before leaving it. Also adjust after all of the pumps have been the time and play with the tab of the rod. Adjust and cover the cylinder head cover, fuel pump timing window plugs in, and remove the back bearing over tool. Fuel nozzle. The nozzle is a device used to inject metered amount of the fuel and cylinder clearance at the exact required instant during the compression stroke of the valve with the nozzle seal of the fuel passage for the nozzle tip that prevents leakage of fuel during the rest of the cycle. The spray hole atomize the fuel, verifying myths to the metric pattern, and to mix the compressed air with the starting ignition and maintain combustion. Alright, description. The fuel injection nozzle with figure 5-7 located with the cylinder head with inject the fuel oil directly in the cylinder. Consider the holder body, the fuel inlet duct and drain duct with the valve body, nozzle tip of the valve, loading spring with the top plate with the spring pressure of the adjusting shim with the adjusting nut. Hold the spring together. The hydraulic pressure fuel with the 3500 and 3800 psi chamber between the valve. See with the valve, exceed with the valve. Spring pressure of the valve is forced open. Valve is open. The fuel oil high pressure flow with the chamber between the valve with the valve. See with the nozzle tip of the spray within the cylinder through the spray holes with in the nozzle tip. As the holes on only a few thousandths of an inch of the diameter, the oil sprayed with the form of the fine mist and mix of the compressed air and cylinder to form the combustible mixture. Mixture is ignited with heat created with the compressing air type cylinder. Burns rapidly, produced with increased pressure needed to provide drive the piston into the power stroke. A small quantity of fuel leaks upward between the valve stem and the valve bore, lubricating these parts that goes through the drain line nozzle holder to the drain compartment under the cylinder head cover. From that it hits hereby. From here it is drained through the tube of the fuel pump housing. Combines drain fuel with the fuel injection pump, eventually returning the fuel tank through the fuel return header. Alright, so number 5-7 is cut away the fuel injection cylinder system. 1 is your cylinder head cover. 2 is a high pressure fuel line. 3 is the fuel nozzle. 4 is an injection pump. 5 is an inlet pump. Fuel inlet. 6 is a drain. passage pump enclosure casting. 7 is a control rack. 8 is a fuel drain passage. 10 is a cylinder. 11 is push rod adjustment. 12 lock nut. 12 is your fuel drain passage, fuel drain header. Or figure 5-8. Hosel knocker tool. The sliding weight knocker nozzle knocker bolt. Alright, if the nozzle holders are bound due to the carbon buildup, they can be removed with the nozzle knocker tool shown in figure 5-8. If the nozzle holder is removed, remove the gasket bound the cylinder head, recess installation. Clean out all the carbon nozzle holder, reassess ports of the cylinder head, make sure the tip of the end of the nozzle holder is clean. Place the new copper gasket on the small end of the nozzle. Small end of the grease can be used as a hold of the gasket and place. Insert the small end of the nozzle holder into the recess port. Orientate the fuel drain. Place the cam of the plate over the nozzle holder and holder studs. Apply the self-locking nut with the tighten them to the torque value listed in the data sections. Properly tighten the nozzle clamping bar with the important if they are not tight enough. The exhaust gauge gas of the carbon may build up between the fuel nozzle and the nozzle port, causing the nozzle holder to be bound and plate with the clamping bar not to tight. Except parts of the nozzle valve assembly, it will become distorted, causing the nozzle valve. Excessive tightening of these valves that can be used also cause cracks to develop between the nozzle opening of the valve seat with the board of the cylinder head. The extreme case can result with the seating of the exhaust and inlet valves. 5. Remove the protective cap at the end of the high pressure line from the pump with the nozzle connections. Apply with the high pressure line to tighten the nuts. Be certain the odor gets into the connection. Check for the leaks if the leaks point by the engine started. Storing spare nozzle. The fuel nozzle assembled is done immediately with the install of the engine. Pour clean SAE10 lubricating oil. And the fuel inlet drain valve. Seal the openings using the caps of the plug is commercial prepared with hot plastic dip. Ethyl cellulose. Protect the nozzle tip during the spray holes with grease. Dip the nozzle in hot plastic dip ethyl cellulose to avoid damage. Handle the parts carefully. Throw them in clean dry air. Never to take a chain of the injection equipment. It needs to renew it rather than trying to extend its life. Data: large tanks 30,000 gallons, small tank 1,700 gallons. RPM 1800, pressure 4 psi, fuel 3 gallons per minute, valve setting, pump relief 75 psi, pressure regulating 35 psi, injection pumping time 28 degrees, bottom dead center, torque values, injection 320 to 340 pounds, adjuster sleeve 300 to 320 pounds, delivery valve holder, fuel nozzle mounting 335 pounds, 30 to 35 pounds a foot, torque. Nozzle assembling 130 to 150 pounds a foot. Injection pump mounting bolts 40 to 50 pounds a foot. And this shows you your engine fuel oil system. Chapter 6, cooling water system.